Hello, welcome to Watches TV, welcome on Primetime Watchmaking in the News, and despite this rather awkward moment in history, where we still have many stories to share with you today. But first of all, I hope you are all doing good and are safe, and thank you so much for all your kind words received. And yes, well, you can count on us to do our maximum to keep you up to date with what's going on in the industry. There are still a few product launches here and there, obviously. I mean, not as many as usual, but we also have other things to talk about. I mean, for instance, we will do a follow-up on Audemars Piguet's latest launch, the remaster 01 that you saw here on the Watches TV. Breitling going full vintage too, but compensating with some tech and green initiatives. But then we also have some real and affordable vintage watches for you to enjoy. So we'll go over some decisions taken by brands also when it comes to announcing their new products. Do we show them or not, or when? We'll have an update on what shows, and on our side, well, we very sadly have to announce that we also had to postpone our Watchtrippin activity planned in May and June, and we really hope that the following ones will occur, and such get-togethers will mean even more for all of us. Well, plenty to talk about, so relax, enjoy, and let's keep the discussion open with the comments. I really like it, and we'll very quickly start with our monthly selection of vintage watches sold here at the club and available on our website, and these have already been presented to our good patrons, a little perk for them. So, in our monthly selection, we have two Omega Seamasters from the early 70s, a cool Jedi version with blue dial and this highly recognizable plane-shaped minute hand of the chrono, and this very emblematic sturdy case. We also have a Memomatic, that's a practical alarm wristwatch where you can set the alarm at the very minute of your choice, and as a quick side note, it's the same barrel which fuels the movement, but also the alarm. And finally, we have a cool Omega stopwatch from the 60s, obviously not as useful today as it used to be, but it's just a very nice, cool looking object, and I particularly like the sturdy and rugged feel of this case. Looks solid. Then you have this plastic holder, which makes it very nice table decoration object. Really nice. I used to have it on my desk. Then we have a very original Lemania bullhead chronograph, and you have to remember that the Lemania manufacturer from the Vallée de Joux was a big provider of high-end movement, in particular for Omega. And today, when we think of bullhead, we often refer to Omega for this, but here you have the original Lemania version, and this is really a super cool watch with pushers on top, a bit similar to the stopwatch model shown previously. And you have a minute counter at 12 o'clock, but you can also use kind of a sliding inner bezel to help you measure increments of time of your liking. Well, a truly original and rare watch. Really love it. Okay, now going back to the 50s, but still talking chrono with this really nice model from a brand which disappears in the 80s, Excelsior Park, victim of the quartz crisis, an old Swiss brand founded at the turn of the 20th century, and more known for being a movement provider, but nevertheless coming up with some really nice looking watches such as this 36mm gold-plated model. I mean, an elegant watch, and the pushers are really, pleasant to activate. Really like this one. Still going back in time, we have this Longines military anti-magnetic watch from the 40s, a pretty big watch for its time. I like its shape, I like the bezel. I mean, it's a really cool watch, made in this case for the Czech Air Force. Then we have this simple but just good-looking Omega three-hander from the 60s. I mean, it's a nice shaped case, steel case, silver dial, simple but elegant, I think. Then we have a very nice but small-sized Breitling, only 29mm. Don't really know the date, but apparently from the 30s. It's in really good condition, and I do like this red second hand. And with the same feature, then we have another watch, a Stowa watch, that's a German brand, and this watch was produced for the French military in the late 40s, early 50s. Difficult to have an exact date. And to finish, well, this month's selection, well, we have this rather funky Tissot day-date steel bracelet, and this very 70s-like cool original dial. Okay, that's it for our monthly selection, and these watches are available on our website, link in the description, and don't hesitate to subscribe to our other channel, thewatches.boutique, if you want to see them more in detail. But now let's go back to some news. Yes, back to the news, and yes, these are very strange times, and with the cancellation of the main watch shows that was supposed to occur at the end of this month, and actually we just heard that Couture, which was supposed to happen in early June in Las Vegas, well, this has naturally also been cancelled. Well, I thought that some or most brands would have at least a few new watches in their closet to show in the next few weeks, but things don't seem to go that way, and for a few reasons. So the main one is that we are not necessarily in a party mood right now, and therefore party-like, super enthusiastic communication could sound shocking for some. But at the same time, I still think that we must remain as positive as possible. I know it's easier said than done. And actually, I salute those that still do, like mb&f and the introduction of the HM10 Bulldog. Thought of it a bit of fresh air, actually. But anyhow, that's why many brands have postponed to a later date their new product presentation, or even skipping 2020, such as Patek Philippe, which will wait for 2021 for this. And it seems that Rolex might actually follow on this. But naturally, this will only alter so slightly the demand for their watches. But there's also another reason why we won't see that many new products that soon, as brands often finish these new watches presented at the shows just days, sometimes even hours before the opening of Basel and SIHH, and actually it is more the prevailing rule. So new timepieces coming straight out of the oven, and with the current containment measures, well, you get the point. I mean, the industry is at a standstill completely, factories are closed, suppliers not being able to supply, workshops are empty, and no one knows how long this is going to last, though some are currently pushing to reopen production capabilities, and a few factories have partially reopened as of this Monday. Well, all this makes it very complicated to finish these new watches that we were supposed to discover, but there are a few brands that are well prepared and still willing to communicate, and we will do our maximum to share with you what we can. And to do so, and as briefly expressed recently, I will be joined by my good friend Susan Wong, Editor-in-Chief of World Tempest, and we will produce and publish as many short videos on as many interesting brands as possible regarding their novelties, so maybe a wider range of brands we don't necessarily talk about too much on the Watches TV. Our way of being as supportive as possible to the industry, because yes, times are tough and will remain tough for a while. So it's actually a profound game changer for many. There will be casualties, and let's be quite blunt, as some brands will simply not make it, or at the minimum, we can expect a pretty serious downsizing of the industry. And the paradox, and I don't want to sound like I'm throwing the industry I love under a bus, but its downsizing was inevitable, and for those who have been following us for many years, well, it's definitely something I've been saying for a long time. I mean, the myth of eternal growth was just an illusion, and what will come out of the current crisis was unfortunately already written. I mean, it's just that now things have accelerated big time, and I wish I could be wrong, but there's no way that things will go back to what they were. I mean, survival of the fittest for sure, but also for the clever and opportunists, the most meaningful ones, which doesn't mean the cheapest or the most expensive, but the ones offering value for the money. Nothing wrong with this, but yes, it would be obviously rather interesting to see what will occur once the dust settles. And when I say the fittest, well, this leads me to come back on this new timepiece from Audemars Piguet, the Remaster 01, that we just covered here, and there are a few things I wanted to add which illustrates the points I just made. Audemars Piguet is clearly today part of this pretty small club of winner brands, and I already talked a few times about the fact that we now have 10, 15 brands that are dominating the business, but AP is even beyond that and is clearly on the podium with the crowned Rolex and Patek Philippe. Okay, not at their level, but nevertheless a very enviable position with a brand like Richard Mille not too far off. And interestingly enough, I mean, none of these brands belong to the big luxury groups, okay? But that can be the subject of another video, just food for thought. So let's come back on AP, and I guess that you all remember that last year when they introduced the Code 1159 collection, this came with some serious mixed results, or let's say uneven appreciation to say the least, though the brand had put some considerable development efforts into it with the understandable intention of not being so dependent on the royal oak. So consider the other two podium brands I just mentioned, Rolex and Patek. Well, of course, they had their top sellers, but nonetheless, they have a wider range of products to offer. And these contribute to the brand's overall liking, and at the same time diversifies a little bit the sources of revenue. Okay, maybe the Cellini not impacting that much Rolex's balance sheet though. It's a nice watch, but you get the idea. So, since this launch, AP has invested huge amounts of marketing money promoting the Code 1159, a name, by the way, I still can't get. Well, you could and can still see ads in all magazines and newspapers, and I'm not talking little tiny ads, but I mean full back covers and so forth, as well as massive billboards all over the world. But has it done Anything to it? Well, going along with some discussions I've had with either colleagues or collectors, I'm not so sure, and therefore AP naturally couldn't stay on this impression, and maybe, well, in 5-10 years the 1159 could become a success, and these vast marketing budgets might finally have an influence on people's appreciation. But you need deep pockets, and actually, well, AP has them, but it still needs to be a bit rational, and that's where this Remaster 01 can help, I believe. So AP has produced some amazing timepieces over time, pieces that are highly appreciated by collectors, not at the level of Patek or Rolex, and sometimes represents good purchasing opportunities and something that can be said also with Vacheron Constantin, for instance. But these collectors today have slightly shifted or turned their back a little bit on the brand, which for them has become a little bit too much lifestyleish. So these collectors are now more interested in these small independent brands. We often talk here on the Watches TV. But is this lifestyleish appreciation good or bad? And this is quite a fundamental question. So personally, I think it's a good on a business standpoint, and I know some may say that AP maybe lost a little bit its soul by doing so, but that's quite a harsh judgment, because at the end of the day, the hugely respectable success of AP is good for the industry. And I will make a little parallel with cars and Ferrari in particular. So some 40 years ago, Ferrari produced much lesser cars. Production methods were less industrial, resulting in slightly less reliable cars. But of course, I mean, they were highly desirable by people in the know, people that were truly passionate about the brands, the cars, knew all the details. So today, Ferrari industrially produces like 10,000 cars, approximately 10 times more than in the 70s. And I'm totally convinced that only a very small percentage of Ferrari customers know what engine is in their car, what kind of brakes and so forth, but they know it's a good overall package, prestigious, high performance, and that's good enough for them. So the brand is superior to the sum of all its components, and I believe this is something achieved by AP today. So when you take this Remaster 01, one can clearly see that it's an industrially produced movement, machine finished, and they sell it for 50,000 Swiss franc and will produce 500 pieces. That's more than double what mb&f produces, 5 times Gröbel Force, 7 times Kari-Voutilainen. Well, with 50,000 Swiss franc, you can buy much more artisan-made types of watches, okay, maybe not new ones, but by buying a Remaster 01, you buy a status. You're part of the power demonstration of the brand, and by coming with a historically inspired watch, well, AP simply reminds its new segment of customers that the brand has indeed a very prestigious past, that is not only the Royal Oak, and kind of counterbalances this the questionable liking or not of the 1159. So yes, I did like the Remaster, a nice watch, and we will most certainly see a 02 and a 03 version based on some other historical model. But for me, the price tag is just too high, but I'm very happy that they can do this, because like I said, it's good for the industry. We need strong players, strong pillars, especially in today's context. And if we go back to this parallel with the world of cars, well, in the 60s, 70s, there were many small workshops producing great cars, but 99% of them have disappeared. So sad, but true, and today's success of Ferrari, Lamborghini, well, these benefit a much larger ecosystem than simply these brands, and this despite the fact that a lot has been internalized, but you still have a large network of suppliers, and therefore families living from this, and same can be said about watchmaking. So yes, on one side of the spectrum, you have a big power brand with some iconic and highly desirable products, but with the indispensable massive marketing means to make themselves meaningful. And on the other side of the spectrum, artisan brands, small production, high added value. And well, in the middle, it's going to be complicated, and value for money is what's going to make the difference, and that's it. Okay, next brand going full vintage is Breitling, who just revealed the re-edition of the Top Time, a pretty cool looking timepiece from the 60s with these triangle segments around the chrono subdials. But I wouldn't say that it is a very original direction taken by the brand, but nonetheless, I mean, I fully get it. So Breitling has indeed produced so many cool looking watches in the past. For instance, I mean, I just love my early 70s chronomat, love these square orange hands. But that's precisely the point. I prefer the original version, the vintage version, than this new version. Okay, this last one will most certainly be more water resistant and so forth, but still costs more than the cool vintage version, which by the way will hold its value much better. And I know I'm not helping today's industry by saying so, but again, I mean, you should first buy a watch to make you happy. And if this Top Times does, well, then it's perfect, and I'm very happy for you. But there are a couple of additional things, interesting things I wanted to say about this watch. First is that you can buy it online, and we'll get back to this in a second. And the second one is that its certificate of authenticity is now written in the blockchain. And I quite like the gap between the idea of coming with a re-edition watch, okay, slightly bigger than the original model, but this tech dimension that brings to it, brings something a little bit different, and it's something that we'll probably see with all their new products in the coming years. So another interesting thing to note is that they just announced that they will cease production of non-recyclable watch boxes, and really going the route of being as eco-friendly as possible, if one can say so. Okay, it's marketing, but at least, I mean, it won't hurt, and just demonstrate their intention of doing things a little bit differently, because Breitling, the goal for them is clearly to be part of this club of winning brands, and they are fully entitled to make it happen, even if it's mainly by reissuing vintage watches, as long as they don't exaggerate in their pricing. And I think that's the direction that they've clearly taken, coming back to a price point which may seem more reasonable. So for instance, a few years back, I wouldn't have been surprised to see this watch 20% more expensive. Okay, I mentioned e-commerce, and with this current situation, well, I clearly feel that brands had the perfect opportunity or excuse to try things. And a very good example comes from H. Moser, which will offer now 3 of their new watches through their website directly. And all those 3 watches have this pretty cool Vanta black dial, a super profound black material, which doesn't reflect light. So they're cool watches, but very interesting, and in a certain way, not too surprising to see a brand like H. Moser trying this. And this is, again, good and clever opportunism, and it will be very interesting to analyze some general consumer, number of consumer habits once this world large confinement period will be behind us. Okay, well, I guess this prime time was long enough, and I will gently shut up. I wanted to talk about Tiger Heuer's and Tissot recently released connected watches, what they mean, but this will wait a little bit. Let's remain mechanical. And we will start with our first batch of videos done with my colleague Susan Wong, and we will go over De Bethun's new timepieces. Not all of them, but some cool ones nevertheless. Well, thanks for watching. See you real soon. Thanks for your support, and a massive Viva Watchmaking to you. All the best, and stay safe, and looking forward not having to say this again. See you soon.